"Well, whatever is that a-creeping down thy back, Car Darch?" said one of the group suddenly. All looked at Car. Her gown was a light cotton print, and from the back of her head a kind of rope could be seen descending to some distance below her waist, like a Chinaman's queue. "'Tis her hair falling down," said another. No, it was not her hair. It was a black stream of something oozing from her basket, and it glistened like a slimy snake in the cold still rays of the moon. "'Tis treacle," said an observant matron. Treacle it was. Car's poor old grandmother had a weakness for the sweet stuff. Honey she had in plenty out of her own hives, but treacle was what her soul desired, and Car had been about to give her a treat of surprise. Hastily lowering the basket, the dark girl found that the vessel containing the syrup had been smashed within. By this time there had arisen a shout of laughter at the extraordinary appearance of Car's back, which irritated the Dark Queen into getting rid of the disfigurement by the first sudden means available, and independently of the help of the scoffers. She rushed excitedly into the field they were about to cross, and, flinging herself flat on her back upon the grass, began to wipe her gown as well as she could by spinning horizontally on the herbage and gathering herself over it upon her elbows. The laughter rang louder. They clung to the gate, to the posts, rested on their staves in the weakness engendered by their convulsions at the spectacle of Car. Our heroine, who had hitherto held her peace, at this wild moment could not help joining in with the rest. It was a misfortune in more ways than one. No sooner did the Dark Queen hear the soberer, richer tone of Tess among those of the other work-people than a long smouldering sense of rivalry inflamed her to madness. She sprang to her feet and closely faced the object of her dislike. "How darest thou laugh at me, hussy?" she cried. "I couldn't really help it when t'others did," apologized Tess, still tittering. "Thus think the best everybody dost, because the best first favourite wi' he just now. But stop a bit, my lady, stop a bit. I'm as good as two of such. Look here, here's at 'ee." To Tess's horror, the Dark Queen began stripping off the bodice of her gown, which, for the added reason of its ridiculed condition, she was only too glad to be free of, till she had bared her plump neck, shoulders, and arms to the moonshine, under which they looked as luminous and beautiful as some Praetzellian creation, in their possession of the faultless rotundities of a lusty country girl. She closed her fists and squared up at Tess. "Indeed, then, I shall not fight," said the latter majestically. "And if I had known you was of that sort, I wouldn't have let myself down as to come with such a horridge as this is." The rather too inclusive speech brought down a torrent of vituperation from other quarters upon fair Tess's unlucky head, particularly from the Queen of Diamonds, who, having stood in the relations to d'Urberville that Car had also been suspected of, united with the latter against the common enemy. Several other women also chimed in, with an animus that none of them would have been so fatuous as to show but for the rollicking evening they had passed. Thereupon, finding Tess unfairly browbeaten, the husbands and lovers tried to make peace by defending her, but the result of that attempt was directly to increase the war. Tess was indignant and shamed. She no longer minded the loneliness of the way and the lateness of the hour. Her one object was to get away from the whole crew as soon as possible. She knew well enough that the better among them would repent of their passion the next day. They were all now inside the field, and she was edging back to rush off alone, when a horseman emerged almost silently from the corner of the hedge that screened the road, and Alex d'Urberville looked round upon them. "What the devil is all this row about, workfolk?" he asked. The explanation was not readily forthcoming, and in truth he did not require any. Having heard their voices while yet some way off, he had ridden creepingly forward and learnt enough to satisfy himself. Tess was standing apart from the rest near the gate. He bent over toward her. "Jump up behind me," he whispered, "and we'll get shot of the screaming cats in a jiffy." She felt almost ready to faint, so vivid was her sense of the crisis. At almost any other moment of her life she would have refused such proffered aid and company, as she had refused them several times before, and now the loneliness would not of itself have forced her to do otherwise, but coming, as the invitation did, at the particular juncture when fear and indignation at these adversaries could be transformed by a spring of the foot into a triumph over them, she abandoned herself to her impulse, climbed the gate, put her toe upon his instep, and scrambled into the saddle behind him. The pair were speeding away into the distant grey by the time that the contentious revellers became aware of what had happened. The Queen of Spades forgot the stain on her bodice, and stood beside the Queen of Diamonds and the newly married, staggering young woman, all with a gaze of fixity in the direction in which the horse's tramp was diminishing into silence on the road. "What be ye looking at?" asked a man who had not observed the incident. "Ho, ho, ho!" laughed Dark Car. "He, he, he!" laughed the tippling bride, as she steadied herself on the arm of her fond husband. "He, he, he!" laughed Dark Car's mother, stroking her moustache as she explained laconically, "Out of the frying pan into the fire." Then these children of the open air, whom ever excess of alcohol could scarcely endure permanently, betook themselves to the field path, and as they went there moved onward with them around the shadow of one's head a circle of opalized light, formed by the moon's rays upon the glistening sheet of dew. Each pedestrian could see no halo but his or her own, which never deserted the head shadow, whatever its vulgar unsteadiness might be, but adhered to it and persistently beautified it, till the erratic motions seemed an inherent part of the irradiation, and the fumes of their breathing a component of the night's mist, and the spirit of the scene, and of the moonlight, and of nature seemed harmoniously to mingle with the spirit of the wine. End of Chapter 10.